Welcome to the Scott and Holman podcast. Back here, busy sports weekend, a busy week of speculation about that little opening in the athletic department. I believe head football coach, I believe, came open this past week, and obviously we have potted about that subject less than 24 hours after it happened in real time. Would encourage you, if you were listening to this episode 921, to go back and listen to 920 if you haven't already. But a lot of great stuff to talk about here tonight. Volleyball entering the postseason, both basketball programs. I think we're in varying degrees of an optimistic place about that. And of course, we're going to talk about what we know a few days after the U of H athletic administration dismissed Dana Holgorsen, what we know about that opening, what we have learned the past few days. Dustin, been a little less time in between we usually talked. So in the few days since we've talked, how have you been doing, friend?
I'm doing well, other than my lady friend and I both got a little congested and ill over the Thanksgiving holiday. I'm mostly getting over it. She's still working on it, so it's a little bit of a sicky coffin household right now, but we're doing our best in terms of the Cougar stuff, man. Just like 4 sports we got to talk about today, 4 kind of different emotions about all 4 of them. A lot of different things going on, some interesting stuff with obviously the football being open, some bittersweetness with the volleyball regular season coming to an end. So yeah, lots to get to. Excited to be here with y'all chatting about it. Bobby, how about you, bud? How you doing?
Oh man, I'm great. It's I have a bunch of PTO to use before the end of the year, so it's kind of a forced vacation for me this week. So kind of chilling out and just trying to do I don't like to say it's a honey-do list because they're mostly things that I want to get done, but today cleaned out the garage, so one done, and yeah, look forward to knocking more things off the list this week.
It's a gift to your responsible self from your irresponsible self, with your I guess irresponsible self being the doer there. That's how I'm thinking. Yeah. This is a split personality situation.
Normalize calling yourself honey and giving yourself honey-do lists.
Exactly.
That's right. We're not just a Houston Cougar podcast. We're a Houston Cougar podcast that also gives you a little bit of personal growth advice for the week to come, which is very funny. If you know us, we are not like, we are the absolute last people on earth. Like, yeah, I listen to inspirational stuff on the way to work. Like, I don't know about, like, I know Dustin is not that kind of person, but unless you've become the kind of person like, I listen, like
absolutely not.
Certain kinds of people in sales, which you're not in sales, but your job is sales adjacent, are just like, yeah, I listen to sales pitches on the way to on my commute. Just like, I would drive off the nearest bridge if I did that. Anyway. Sorry if you're that kind of person. If I've alienated the show, please stay for the actual Houston Cougar content.
Join our Patreon. No,
join our Patreon. No, but patreon.com/sh podcast. I'm going to use any chance to transition that I can. There's a little 16 cents a day. You can support what we do, doing a weekly podcast, sometimes multi-weekly, like the current week. And we did a nice premium show that I think aged pretty well, Bobby, other than the part where we were just like, I'm not sure they're going to make a change. I thought we did a good job. I think talking about the coaching situation before it happened. Obviously, like I said in the intro, you can check out previous free episodes as well, but please support us at patreon.com/sh podcast. Little as $5 a month. You can make a big difference for what we do here on this show. Also, got to mention our good friends, Charlie Hustle, charliehustle.com. It's over now, but you really should, if you did not already, take advantage of their 30% off Black Friday through Cyber Monday sale site-wide. Did some absolutely absurd deals over there, and you can get a slightly less absurd but still fantastic 15% off your orders right now that we are no longer in the holiday period, but you can still get something off just by listening to the sound of my voice right now by using our promo code SHP15 at checkout. You can get a fantastic collection of shirts, hoodies, and crew necks. I am spokesmodeling for everyone watching the Charlie Hustle white with the really savage looking gray Cougs logo on it. One of my favorite go-to rotation shirts. So charliehustle.com, Charlie Hustle. Support our friends doing vintage made fresh over there in beautiful Kansas City. Of course, gotta mention our friends at the 1012 Network too, at TN12 Network, wherever you use social media of some variety. So guys, we're going to lead off with, we're going to get into the actual sports. We're going to talk plenty about the 3 in-season sports that we have slated for tonight, but got to start with Cougar football. And I think, like I said, going to lead here at the top quickly with the news such as it exists right now here as we record on Tuesday evening as it pertains to the Cougar football coaching search after Dana Holgorsen's dismissal on Sunday morning. We had Joseph Duarte report this morning that U of H had, or it was about to have, I guess at the time that was reported, at least the second interview with UTSA head coach Jeff Traylor for the opening. I I saw Channel 2 sports director and longtime Houston sports TV guy Randy McElvoy tweet out also that there was, quote, significant momentum building towards Tulane head coach Willie Fritz at U of H as well. So that's basically the news as we have it right now, guys. Am I missing anything important that's developed here in the last couple days post Dana Holgorsen's dismissal?
You're missing the very important development that the betting markets have clipped.
I was just about to say it
as the favorite for some reason.
The betting market. We're using the most heavy the betting markets, because right now I tell you, I can, for the people at home, pull up my Circa app. I cannot bet on any head coach opening there right now. It's probably best that I couldn't, because I'd probably like whiff on most of them, even though I think I know what I'm doing there.
There's a polling podcast that I listen to called 538. Some of you may have heard it before, that just does some cool polling info and breaks down different polls and how it affects different things. Anyways, they always talk about the Irish teens, because these betting markets are always like, the joke is that it's Irish teenagers just betting on US events and happenings going on, because it's these like really obscure like European books that you can book it on, and they always say, well, the Irish teens think so and so is going to happen because it's these weird betting markets like that. So the Irish teens are betting heavily on Cliff Kingsbury to be our head coach.
I just like just clip that out of context because it's so fantastic. Sorry, Dustin, you can go back to say something.
No, I was gonna say, I mean, I appreciate that. Maybe, you can't really say Vegas. You can just say maybe like the international markets or something. That, but I don't know. There are people somewhere taking money on who is going to be the next Houston Cougar head coach. Most people that are taking money, anywhere. I guess Vegas has got the best of the best, but I don't know. Yes, it's probably okay. I was going to say a lot of things, and then I realized I should just quit while I'm ahead and just say, yes, it is probably largely irrelevant that the betting markets have Cliff Kingsbury as the favorite. That's probably what we should just go ahead and go with. But no, I mean, it is always interesting during coaching season to try to like parse the different things, right? Because like Randy McElvoy tweeting that there is momentum building, quote unquote, within U of H. What does that mean? Like, what does that
right.
That means nothing, right? To me, what that means is there's at least one person who has some sort of job in the U of H athletics department who gets along with Rory McElvoy and likes Willie Fritz and is like, hey, put this out there because I want to
could be a booster too, but yeah, your general point is correct. Yeah.
So someone tangentially related to the process has Randy McElvoy's number and is like, hey, I like Willie Fritz. I want to get his name out there. Let's get people talking about Willie Fritz for this job. That, to me, that's what that means more than anything. So, I expect he'll be a candidate for the job. I'd be surprised if U of H doesn't at some point, talk to him and or his agent about the opening. He certainly seems, as we've talked about, like a pretty good candidate for it. But yeah, it is. Other than the only thing that I really feel that concrete about is when Joseph Duarte tweets that U of H is interviewing Jeff Traylor. Go, okay, that's a real thing that's happening.
Yep.
That's something we can actually say, hey, that's a concrete thing that's happening. So, I take that fairly seriously. Doesn't mean they're going to offer him the job. Doesn't mean he won't get offered some other job. Doesn't mean he'll not just go back to UTSA and be like, hey, and, see if he can get some demands out of them, whatever the case may be.
And they're saying that he already is, that Traylor's already going to UTSA going, I'm tired of having to, squeeze every nickel out of you guys. Like, can I get some help here? So sorry to interrupt there.
No. I was rambling, but the point being it's a very silly season when you're just constantly reading all these different reports and going, okay, are you just saying this because someone else said it? Do you actually have a source? Is your source actually trying to get the truth out there, or just trying to get their point of view out there, whatever the case may be? So, we'll know what's happened when Joseph Duarte tells us that U of H has hired somebody, and anything until then, you maybe are going to be just trying to guess along with everybody else.
And like, to your point, that is this just somebody who's trying to get something out? The Randy McElvoy tweet from yesterday, hearing from multiple sources tied to UH search that former TCU head coach Gary Patterson is a name to watch. If you stop there, it's like, okay, maybe he has a source. It's this next part that makes you go, did his agent, did Coach Patterson's agent write this part?
His source is Gary Patterson's agent.
Has to be.
FB Coach P is recharged and sources say he's ready to get back in. What does that mean? I think he would be a great choice by Chris Pesman should that develop.
Gary Patterson reported to have the energy of a 36-year-old, not a 63-year-old. His tan extra crisp.
It's so clearly written by Gary Patterson's agent. At least they should have done the classic, here's the homework, but change a couple of answers so the teacher's not suspicious. Randy didn't do that here. Randy didn't do that. He was just like, yeah, we can both make 100 on this homework assignment. Well, what's the problem with that? It's like, what are we doing, man?
Mark Berman wouldn't have done that shit. Like, I know he's your close personal buddy. I know you have opinions about Mark Berman, but like Mark Berman would have done a more professional job. Mark Berman made it at least less transparently obvious that he was just being fed this by Gary Patterson's agent or someone very close to Gary Patterson. No, you're right, Dustin.
I know Mark Berman, and you, Randy McElroy,
or no more. Yeah, and I don't disagree with the word you said, and we're not just picking on Mr. McElroy. Like, honestly, you see it at ESPN, you see it at big publications. I mean, the biggest scoop guys out there now, not to get too on this tangent, are guys who just like know the agents to be fed the right information by and have developed the relationships to be fed them like 30 seconds before everyone else in the media. And college football is no different, if a little bit less followed, because we're talking college football versus the National Basketball Association or NFL.
Let me just say, got to give it to Duarte here for his coverage on this. Just like shout out Joseph Duarte on this one. He's been on it. I was actually talking to my wife about the whole, I was like, yeah, we let Holgorsen go, blah, blah, blah. Kind of talking to her about it. And I go, well, he got fired by Duarte. And then we came out with with a statement like, we knew he was fired when Duarte did it. We didn't need the statement from U of H. It was like, yeah, we know Duarte got this, and that's fine. Like, so just shout out Duarte. And when he says it, it's something that's pretty concrete. Not that he may not be fed things by agents and that kind of stuff, but man, he seems to be pretty locked in.
He's a journalist. He has sources like everyone else, but like, it's very reliable. If he's willing to go out there with it, it's probably good information, like it was with our now former head coach.
Yep.
So should we talk about the poll we ran this week and who the good people of the Houston fandom wants to see as their next head coach?
Yeah, I haven't gotten back with the margin of error and and that kind of distributions and all that fun stuff yet. But I think Dustin, you have enough info to
buddy,
tell us.
Look, we need the report now. We need this report now.
All right, let's get it out here. So we did do a report from Monday morning to Tuesday morning. It was open for a little less than 24 hours. Got 215 of y'all responded to tell us who you did and did not want to be the next head football coach at the University of Houston. So it was a 3-part survey for those of you that didn't do it. The first part was we gave you all 10 guys whose names we threw out in the last episode, and we asked you for each guy, is this your first choice? Is this a strong choice? Is this a so-so choice? Do you have no opinion, or do you say hell no to this guy? So you got 5 options for each coach. We then had a couple follow-up questions we'll get to in a little bit. But just looking at who the picks were, really, I think not too surprising that the 2 favorites were kind of the 2 favorites that we identified in the last episode. Jeff Traylor and Willie Fritz are kind of the people that most people want to see. If you look at who got the most first choice votes, Traylor was 28.7%. Of you said that Traylor was your first choice. 26.6%, so just a slightly lower number said Willie Fritz. The only other people that got really any kind of significant play here were Will Stein, the Oregon offensive coordinator, who got 15%, and then Gary Patterson, who got 13.1%. So really very much a 4-horse race. Fell off the cliff. No one else got no one else got even 5% of your vote. So really Traylor and Fritz were clearly tier A. Stein and Patterson were clearly tier B in terms of who your first choice were. And if you look at first choice or strong choice, it was the same thing. 82.9 of you said that Willie Fritz was either your first choice or would be a strong choice. 78.7 for Traylor. So pretty much 84 and 5 think that either of those guys would be really good. And then Stein and Patterson were that next tier at 55 and 54.2% respectively. So again, a clear tier B there, where over half of you would be pretty happy, it seems like, with Will Stein or Gary Patterson if it doesn't end up being Fritz or Traylor for whatever reason. I was kind of amused by the one respondent who, just far and above everybody else, people did not want to see as the next head coach. To put this in perspective, the second most disliked option out of these 10 was Barry Odom. 14.5% of you said, hell no, I do not want Barry Odom to be the next, which is remarkable. 9 out of 10 guys better than 80% of people were at least like, yeah, it's at least like an okay pick. So only one, with 43.2% of you saying, hell no, Cliff Kingsbury. We do not want those Irish teens to be correct. We do not want Cliff as our next coach. Guys, other than I'll get into the secondary questions here in a little bit, but what were kind of you guys' thoughts to seeing the breakdown from the listeners here?
So we'll kind of go, I want to talk about the thing that you were just talking about, the hell no list there. I think I would have predicted that Cliff Kingsbury would have been getting the most hell no's, just because if you're a Cougar fan, there's a decent chance you're also at least somewhat aware of how the other Texas programs are doing. Maybe not follow them super closely, but you generally know like how it's going with at least the other big names in the state. So there's at least some awareness that, hey, his time at Texas Tech, it wasn't catastrophically bad. I mean, you had Pat Mahomes there and stuff like that, but you also had junior year Pat Mahomes be a transcendent college quarterback and not go to a bowl game because of how bad the rest of Texas Tech was. So I get that, but I would have figured the number would be like around 25, 30%. Mm-hmm. Also that, again, like, and Barry Odom, far from my first choice. Barry Odom, very confident they will not be the head coach of the University of Houston. I'm surprised 14.5% of people said hell no to a guy who just led one of the most woebegone Division I programs to a 9-3 regular season in the Mountain West Championship game. I almost want to say that's more just like lack of awareness of the guy. It's just like, why
that's what I was going to say,
which is fine. Like if you don't, if that's like, there's no criterion for how you vote, how you feel on this thing. I want people's honest opinion. But I was like, wow, Barry, not that he got a ton, 14.5 is not a ton, but I was like, wow, Barry Odom is eliciting that strong of a feeling. I thought Patterson's would be higher too. I thought Patterson would be a lot closer to Cliff for second. If I had to guess, it would have been like Cliff in the high 20s, Patterson like 18, 19%, everyone else with like pretty negligible numbers. That was my first takeaway from it, Bobby.
Yeah, going back to the hell no part, kind of like what we were talking about, you'll notice two of the guys with the lowest name ID in the group, Odom and Banks, were your hell no's. So what that means to me is the hell no was, there are other guys on this list that I'd rather have, and if we got them, I'd be pissed off that we got them because it means we passed up on everyone else. Also a little surprised to see Patterson 13.1% hell no doesn't necessarily surprise me, but the exact same amount of people said he was their first choice. So
yeah, same.
It's
he was number 4. He was number 4 in both. He was
So
13.1, number 4 in hell no.
Really, it feels kind of like how I feel about the Patterson hire. Like, all right, like, okay, if it happens. So that was kind of my big takeaway, just kind of looking at it real quick and doing all that. I think you'll notice Odom also had 48.1% no opinion. So if you combine his no opinion and his hell no, that's 62%. So it's kind of like, well, I don't think people know him. And I think if you do the research on Odom and you see, like you said, Sam, that he's taken that UNLV team to, what is 9 wins, 10 wins this year,
9,
you have to get excited by it. But I just think there's a lot other name. There's more names up here that I'd rather have before Odom. He wouldn't be my first choice, but it would be like, to me, so-so, not because I think he'd be a bad hire, but because I'd rather have 4 people ahead of him on this list.
Yeah, fully agree. The other surprise, I was going to say, Will Stein at number 3 on the first choice. Like, I think we expected Fritz and Traylor in some order to be the top 2 and to have them combined be the plurality of respondents there. But like, I like Will Stein, but like, I would have figured he would have been more like 5 or 6. I wouldn't have figured he would have been third on that.
Yeah, not only number 3 in terms of first choice options, but number 2 in terms of lowest hell no percentage. Less than 2% of respondents said hell no to a 34-year-old, Will Stein, who has, I'm guessing, probably less name recognition than like Fritz and Traylor do from having never been a head coach. So that was remarkable to me that many people felt that they knew enough about Stein to not be like, to not say hell no, just based on kind of what Bobby said of, hey, I know a bunch of these other guys. I don't know this guy, so I'm going to say no to him. Less than 2%. That's pretty remarkable to me. So yeah, him as kind of in that second tier. I would have guessed tier A was going to be Traylor, Fritz. Tier B was going to be Patterson, but kind of surprised that Stein is honestly in there and honestly, slightly ahead of Patterson. It certainly seems like, based on this poll, in terms of who fans want.
I'm glad to see my campaigning on Twitter for Willie Fritz is working here. All right. It's working here, boys.
It's all you. It's no Willie Fritz, certainly.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with Willie
No.
Fritz. Strictly my campaigning for him. Thank you.
Yeah, it's not him going to.
I will be
further
taking no further questions at this time. Thank you. Respect my decision.
So the other questions we're going to mention, just I threw these in there because I thought they'd be interesting as well. We asked you, how confident are you that U of H leadership will make a good hire here? Again, there were 5 options. You could say you were very confident. Excuse me, you were pretty confident, you were unsure, you were not very confident, or you were not at all confident. And the most popular response, with just over 50% of the vote, most of you were pretty confident in U of H. So not overwhelmingly so. The next most popular option at 18% was unsure. 14.9% very confident, 14.4% not very confident, less than 2% not at all confident. That was another one that surprised me a little bit. I thought we'd have at least a couple people that were I guess the firing of Dana Holgorsen has suddenly reignited everyone's belief in the ability of this school and administration to make intelligent decisions. I think is what that means. I don't know. I'm not sure.
I think if you had asked that question before firing Dana, just basically asked it on Saturday night, how confident are you that U of H is going to make the right decision here in the next week, not knowing anything about like the next 24 hours after that, I guarantee that number would not be 1%. I would go so far as to say it'd be like 15-20% higher than what we actually saw here. But yeah, I think like you said, the decision I think has salved a lot of wounds between this fan base and administration.
Yeah, I would have bet enough money that it would hurt to lose that unsure would be the leading candidate here. And I guess they proved me wrong. Cougar fans have proven me wrong.
Pleasantly surprised that the top 2 choices combined for as much a percentage as they did.
Yeah, I was gonna say the most, what was it, 60 over 65%. So essentially 2/3 of you are at least pretty confident that U of H will make a good hire, which I think is pretty good. Final question was whether or not Dana Holgorsen getting fired made you more likely, less likely, or equally likely to buy season tickets / attend games next year. You could also say you were unsure, or it depends on who the next coach will be. So 4 options: more likely, equally likely, less likely, or not sure. This is one that surprised me because I thought that the majority answer would be equally likely. People going, well, I'm a good fan, I was going to go to the games regardless, at least wanting to say that, right? But people were not even saying that. 59%, over 59% of you said,
love the honesty, love it.
More likely to buy season tickets and or go to games next year with Dana Holgorsen gone, which I think speaks to why he's gone, right?
Yeah.
I promise you guys, if they had said on Sunday we're retaining this guy, I would have like gone to the U of H website and followed up by phone call if needed to like make sure I did not have 2 season tickets. I promise you guys that, and I promise you I will not be doing that. I'm gonna at least keep them for this coming season if my finances don't completely go to shit. Yeah.
If 3 out of every 5 of your fans is only going to come, or is going to come up more often if you get rid of a guy. Yeah, again, it gets back to, we've mentioned it a lot, but the quote that Pesman gave when he fired Major Upwood, you can't afford not to fire the guy at that point. If over half of your fan base does not want to show up to support your coach, you just got to get rid of him. It doesn't matter if you think he's a good coach or not, you got to get rid of him at that point. So
absolutely.
59% more likely, 27% equally likely, 12% of you said you were unsure. You're going to wait to see who the next guy was. Out of 215 respondents, 4 of you said you were now less likely. So I guess Dana voted 4 times. I don't know.
I was gonna say, shout out to Dana, his son, and like 2 assistant coaches that he cajoled into voting.
Here's what I don't understand, and maybe you guys can talk me through this. But why would you make it dependent on who they hire? Like, you want a Dana gone. Who could they possibly hire, even in this list of 10, that would make you go, oh yeah, no, I'm going to reduce how, like I'm not going to buy season tickets or something like that. Like, who on this list would you just go, oh yeah, no, done?
I'll answer your question a different way. Can I answer? I was gonna say, can I answer?
Yeah.
I think it could be just like, honestly, you could be unsure if the finances are going to work for you on it. I mean, it could just be like, hey, or it could be like you get like someone who lives up in like DFW, like you, who's just like, I don't know, I'm kind of on the fence of like mini plan versus like just getting the whole shebang. Like I don't think that's all. I don't think that explains it entirely, but that's probably at least a few people. Sorry.
Yeah.
That's true, and I feel like again, like it gets back to I'm going to go way on a deep tangent here if I'm not careful, because I know me and you, Sam, are both really intrigued in like polling broadly and how to, probably all three of us.
I was gonna say Bob
Yeah,
just volunteered that he listens to a polling
polling
podcast.
I think we can go 3 for 3 on that one. No, that's and as I'm sure all three of us know, and probably most of our listeners know, the order of questions, how you word questions, like these things are all hugely important. So it is interesting when I wrote this little poll. The first thing that you did was you ranked all the coaches. Most people, at least one or two guys, they said hell no. So if you answer in question 1 hell no to a couple of guys, because I prompt you not to say I don't prefer this candidate or this is not someone I would really like to, but to say hell no. And then you get to the question, well, did Dana getting fired make you go, well, I don't know. Well, what if they hire one of these guys that I just said hell no to? Because I just, not only, I didn't just say, oh, that's not the guy I want. I just said, oh, hell no. Maybe I'm not actually going to come to games. So there's my, I didn't write this poll quite well enough, big brained theory for why essentially 1 in 8 respondents said that they weren't sure if they were going to be more likely. Because I mean, I feel like even if you're in that position where Sam said, well, I live in DFW, I don't know if the finances are going to work well. Like if you're going to try harder to make it work, then you are more likely, I think, by definition, which is how I would have wanted someone to answer the question. But I can see the point, and I think, I don't know if y'all want to respond. I'm curious, but we also probably should keep going because unlike 5,
that makes sense.
We are not a polling podcast.
It was really interesting. I'm glad you did that, Dustin. Took the effort to actually give us something to talk about here about it. That was really cool.
Yeah, and thank you to the 200
more than us talking about Randy McElvoy's tweets.
And yeah, thanks to the 215 of you that took some time out to have your say.
Absolutely, thank you guys.
We really appreciated that. All right, guys, we ready to move on to some in-season Cougar sports?
Let's do it.
Yes.
All right, so Cougar volleyball, we're going to talk about first as they just finished their regular season this past week and then found out their NCAA tournament destination as well. So we'll start by talking about those last 2 regular season matches. They split the 2 of them. They lost on the road to Baylor, then beat Kansas State at home. Baylor match definitely frustrating because Houston was really only a couple plays away from sweeping this one. They lost the first set by the minimum points, 25-23. The second set, they had the Bears comfortably at arm's length most of the set, won at 25-19. And third set jumped out to a 5-0 lead, led 11-6 before the Bears went on an 8-0 run. But Houston clawed their way back. It was neck and neck. It goes past 25 points before Baylor finally takes the set, 27-25. Houston, I should say, out-hit Baylor by over 100 points in the third set and still managed to lose the set. And what always seems to happen if you outscore your opponent over the first 3 sets but lose 2 of them, it always seems like the fourth one never goes your way, and you kind of pay for not taking advantage. And that's what happened. The Bears finally had a set where they were pretty more in control and won it 25-19 to close out the match. So not the result we wanted in Houston's last regular season road match there.
Yeah, I was actually at the game. I went to Waco for it, which I went to 2 more volleyball games this year than I did football games, which is kind of a interesting little stat there. But I don't say any of that to like pat myself on the back, just kind of a fun little thing. Hit percentage in the first, neither team could miss in the first set. Like being there, I was curious how it was going to feel in the stadium, the day before Thanksgiving. Like not many students are going to be there. How's the crowd there? It is a top 25 matchup. And as much as I hate giving Baylor credit, they did a pretty good job of having a pretty good sized crowd there. Just some of the things that you kind of don't really notice that through the TV screen that you get while you're there. In the third set, when Houston was up, there was a huge play. I think Houston was up. We were up probably 5, I think, at one point. And there was kind of a borderline controversial play, and it went against Baylor. And I think under review or something happened and it didn't go Baylor's way, and it was kind of controversial. And all of a sudden they just rallied around it and just started to claw their way back, just kept clawing their way back. And next thing you know, you lose the third set. And that fourth set, I looked at my wife who was with me, and I just looked at her about a quarter of the way through the set, and I go, this one's over. Like you could just tell the Cougs had kind of been beaten at that point, and it was just kind of felt like it was over. The first set, really fun, really fun set to watch. Both teams hit over 400 on the set. So a ton of fun just to kind of watch. It's It's fun to watch your team playing good games. You'd rather them win, but this is why you joined the Big 12, to go in and play these kind of games and have fun at these kind of games. Even though you lose 3-1, it was fun to be at. It was fun to be in a Big 12 atmosphere. Like, if we're playing SMU, I went to SMU volleyball versus U of H. It never felt like this Baylor game did. It just didn't, right? So this is why you joined the Big 12. It was a ton of fun to be there.
I think the only original thoughts I can add is that this one felt like it would be kind of a mirror image result if it was in Houston, if it was our senior night. And even though, like you said, Bobby, I think important to note that their students were out for Thanksgiving break, I still figured they would have a good crowd for their seniors' final game, even if they've been kind of hit or miss. Baylor has, or more erratic the second half of the season. Really close match throughout. I mean, credit to Baylor for being able to hit 287 against a really good defensive team, even if I think, like you pointed out, Dustin, you got to feel a little bit unlucky, a little bit snake bit that you hit that much better than them and still lost in 4 sets. It feels like there's one conference match a year, with last year, I think, except because the Cougars were so much better than everyone but UCF and the AAC, where this team would like lose even under rare, just like one match where it was just like, come on, like we kicked their butt in 2 of the sets and they just won 3 extremely close sets. So, those kinds of matches, even those one went to 4. One thing that stood out to me in real time stood out to me after that I did not notice in real time, Baylor had 7 service aces to the Cougs 1. I mean, not the only thing that makes the difference in a match like this, but in a closer margins one, I would say definitely a big factor there.
Yeah, and service errors were a big thing for the Cougs in this game too. 13-10 is what they lost that one by. So you combine the 3 there and the 6 aces, and
it's 10 points right there. Yeah.
Yep.
So as frustrating as that was, the Cougs did get some catharsis in their home and regular season finale against Kansas State. It was a little bit scary looking at first. The Cougs had no Abby Jackson in this one. She got dinged up in the Baylor match. Essentially, the word was that had it been an NCAA tournament match that day, she would have played, but they didn't want to risk making things worse before the actual NCAA tournament, which Houston was already a lock for at that point. And then Houston came out and dropped the first set, fairly decisively. 25-19, looked the second best team in that set for sure. But then they just got progressively better each set after that, which you love to see, right? The very next set, find themselves trailing, but clawed their way back. Just, real neck and neck set. Won at 29-27, a super long set. And then the third one won at 25-18, looking comfortably the better team. And then the fourth set, an absolute laugher. Houston better than doubling up the Wildcats, winning the set 25-11. And man, with no Abby Jackson in that K-State match, Kenneth Sauer just absolutely unreal. 25 kills
Incredible.
in that one. K-State just had no answer for her. And the first set or two there saying, as it was still kind of close, you could hear the announcers and watching homies kind of go, okay, just someone else needs to step up besides her. And that was Katie Corelli, who stepped up and had a really big game, ended up closing really strong and kind of put Houston over the edge from it being a competitive first 2 sets to Houston just kind of. So just really nice to get the win on, and obviously really bittersweet getting the senior day with all the incredible senior class that Houston had.
I think one of your more impressive performances the entire season, maybe past couple seasons, considering you were facing one of the hottest teams in the Big 12, a team that, in my opinion, had a decent case for the tournament, though they were on the wrong side of the bubble ultimately on Sunday. And you were able to get the win in less than 5 sets without Abby Jackson, who, like you said, Dustin, was that injury precaution. And easy to forget. You could just look at it afterwards and be like, oh, we won 3-1. The Cougars were a set point away 2 different times in the second set from being down 2-0. And the Cats were up 24-22 in the second set. A few points later, the Cougars were down 25-24 after an Aaliyah Carter kill, but Cougars won the next 2 points, but ultimately, like you said, Dustin, take that second set and kind of, not, I wouldn't say cruise from there, because I think the third set was fairly close until the end there, but really to get the momentum back there, can't overstate what an incredible performance you got from Kenneth Sauer. 25 kills with efficiency, hitting 357 and 8 digs for good measure. Katie Corelli, like you said, we've seen her at times. She's kind of playing a secondary role with just a really, really senior heavy group of offensive players. But I think kind of a glimpse that obviously we don't want this era of Cougar volleyball with Abby Jackson and Kenneth Sauer to end any sooner than it absolutely has to, but that there are good players ready to play bigger roles once those athletes do exhaust their eligibility. And it was nice to see that. And it was again, would prefer to have Abby Jackson play in her very last game at the Fertitta Center, but I think it says something about this program's goals that Abby Jackson has bigger matches coming up here in the next week or so. We're about to talk about, in fact.
Yeah, I don't have a ton to add on top of anything you guys have said. Really good to get that win versus K-State. They, like you guys said, hottest team in the conference leading up to that point, and to just kind of come in and look really good against them is always a positive.
Yeah, shout out Morgan Yondo, who had 27 assists also in her final game at the Fertitta Center as well. We're going to talk really quick, guys, before we get to the postseason stuff about the Big 12 awards too.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to talk about kind of Houston finishing the regular season and the awards there, which, because
perfect.
Like I said, end of the regular season, Houston finishes at 18-9 overall with an 11-7 mark in Big 12 play. Cougs had a winning record in home, road, and neutral site matches during the regular season. The 11-7 mark put them in a tie with Iowa State for fourth place in the Big 12. And that's fourth place in a conference that put 7 teams in the NCAA tournament. And, Coach Rare told us before the season that historically you go 500 in the Big 12, you're going to go to the NCAA tournament. Like you mentioned, Sam, K-State actually got screwed out, but TCU actually, man, if you're a K-State, you got to be doubly mad because they were 10-8 in the Big 12. Did not go. TCU, who was 8-10 in the Big 12, did actually. So 7 went to the tournament. It wasn't the same 7. So K-State did kind of buck the trend for worse, but still an incredibly deep conference that Houston to go 11-7 against is awfully impressive. And, it's just one thing that kind of struck me as the regular season came to an end and we heard Houston's name announced in the tournament here in a little bit is, just like last year, the Sweet 16 run was so much fun. And, this year last year I should say we were all hoping the team was going to make the tournament, but I don't know that we really expected over the course of the season until, they kind of they had won enough matches. You go, hey, we're going to make it. This is the first year since I've been a Cougar volleyball fan for nearly 2 decades here now that I expected the team coming into the year to go to the NCAA tournaments. I think all 3 of us did. We expected that despite the fact that they were taking a massive step up in competition by going to the Big 12. And this team didn't flinch in the face of that. There was never a point in this season when I doubted for a moment this was going to be an NCAA tournament team. They've been just amazing all year against the death schedule that Coach Rare and I joked about, him having put together. Houston won 2/3 of their games against that schedule of death. And so it's been a phenomenal season up until this point. Obviously, still excited to watch them participate in the NCAA tournament, but just want to say how unbelievably proud I am of this team, how exciting it was to watch them all year. And like you mentioned, Sam, how proud I am to see Kenneth Sauer, first team All Big 12 for the 3rd year in a row. Kate Georgiadis, first team All Big 12, Libero of the year. Abby Jackson, second team All Big 12 as well. So just to see the recognition for some of these girls that have worked so damn hard and have had such an incredible season was really exciting and excited to see them play, at least one more match.
Georgiadis is also now the first ever Cougar athlete to win a Big 12 season award. And I think given how important she's been to this program, I think it's a fitting Cougar athlete to have that first honor, no matter how many years longer we're in this league. She's missed consistency as much of a sure thing as any Cougar athlete that we talk about, regardless of sport, on this pod. And with Kenneth Sauer, I think 2 different transfers this summer made it really sink into me that U of H athletics is on a different level now than it was when we all first started back at U of H. Heck, Dustin, since we first started this podcast, it was LJ Crowder coming in for men's basketball and Kenneth Sauer coming in for volleyball. You came into the season needing maybe some offensive weapons around Abby Jackson because some of last year's, I think, key athletes in that area besides Abby Jackson graduated. And I think Sauer has been everything you could hope she'd be and then some. And of course, last but not least, Abby Jackson, who came to this program from about as far away as you can come in the continental United States. She's from the Puget Sound area of Washington. I think she was her high school's first ever Division I signee or first ever Division I volleyball signee, something like that. Coming in to a staff that didn't recruit her, immediately establishes herself her first season in the program as the team's best offensive weapon. I'm going to always remember going to San Antonio to see U of H versus UTSA volleyball and Jackson having 30 kills and being like, she's a freshman? Like, and those are like her 5th or 6th collegiate game there. And just seeing this program rise gradually as kind of the team around Jackson, I think improved in quality has been really cool. But I mean, even as she's now asked to...
Not you, Dustin.
Oh, it's Sam. Okay.
What happened?
Being really still.
You froze. You froze.
Was my audio still good?
No.
We
couldn't hear anything.
No, you had 30 kills. She was a freshman, and then you just froze, and we were like,
And I was like, well, I figured you froze, but then I was like, he's going to come back because there's been times where you've like
Right.
frozen and you come
Yeah,
back and I'm
like,
like, oh,
Yeah. Because Dustin's video froze, but his audio was fine. Fuck, okay. Cool. So we good at it. All right. I'm just going to start with the Abby Jackson section again.
all right.
You'll leave some blank space, though, so I can find this a little easier. And last but not least, of course, it's really cool that Abby Jackson comes to U of H from about as far away as you can come in the continental United States. She's from Puget Sound, and I think it was her high school's first ever Division I volleyball signee or D1 signee, something like that. Coming in to a coaching staff that didn't recruit her, immediately establishing herself as the team's best offensive weapon. I always remember her having that 30-kill game against UTSA. I think it was her 5th or 6th game here when I went to see him in San Antonio. I mean, you saw this program rise gradually as the support around Jackson improved, but she's been such an integral part of the rise of UH volleyball. It's really been cool. Like she's been, it's going to be hard for me to imagine Cougar volleyball and not have Abby Jackson in 24. She's been just such a cornerstone of this program.
She's been synonymous with Cougar volleyball, honestly, for the last 5 years. It is going to be genuinely weird to watch the team without her next year for sure.
Yeah, it's gonna, yeah.
But we don't have to watch the team without her just yet because, as we mentioned, the Cougs are headed to the NCAA tournament. Very annoyingly getting an 8 seed, which was certainly very frustrating for those of us who saw Houston. At least if you assumed that the committee was going to follow the coaches rank or the AVCA rankings, Houston in the 6 to maybe 7 range, but to get fully an 8 seed, frustrating. Not only that, getting an 8 seed that is giving you putting you essentially in a road game in your first round match that you're theoretically the favorite in, because Houston facing a UC Santa Barbara team in the opening round that is it's pretty analogous to like UC Santa Barbara to Stanford is analogous to like Houston to DFW, I would say. So not around the corner, but certainly a much more doable trip.
Like a 5-hour drive up the 101 or so.
Yeah, for Gaucho fans that are wanting to make that trip, it's certainly a little easier than for Cougar fans that might want to get all the way out to Stanford. Women's volleyball, the first 2 rounds were hosted by the 1 to 4 seeds in each bracket, and Houston, kind of as you're picking up on, at number 1 seed Stanford, who you may remember is the team that knocked Houston out in the Sweet 16 last year. So as much as I talked about, it was exciting to have this whole season where we expected this to be a tournament team and then have that payoff. It was definitely a little bit jarring to see an 8 next to Houston's name, and then the realization that, you got a pretty darn good team that is essentially you're essentially playing a road game against in the first round, and then if you manage to pull that off, you get to play a literal road game against one of the best teams in the country.
Yeah, and again, I think that's kind of analogous to last year too. I think UCSB is a bit better than the South Dakota team than we faced last year, but South Dakota is like 2 hours from last year's site in Omaha, and a little further away. But like you said, I'm sure they have some players in their roster. I think scanning their roster, I recognize some NorCal towns. So I'm sure they have at least several players from that general part of California too, but won't spend too much time complaining about that. But like you said, pretty rough that if the Cougars get past UCSB, which I think the Cougs should, but far from a given. This is a 27-4 volleyball team. Wouldn't surprise me at all if they didn't. Your reward is a true road game against the number 2 team in the most recent AVCA top 25 volleyball poll. And talk about the Gauchos a little bit. Would it be Gauchets? Gauchos? No. Gauchos. I think it's Gauchos. Genuine question. I'm not trying to do a bit here. That was a genuine question that came to my mind. But in all seriousness, I think what really stood out to me was that really good defensive team. I mean, I get that I don't know how good top to bottom Big West volleyball is, but regardless, holding any set of opponents over a season to hitting 164, that's pretty loud. Really, really good at the net. Andy Krelling and Grace Wishpard both have over 100 total blocks this season. The Gauchos had 100 more blocks than their opponents over the course of the season. They have the reigning Big West Libero of the year, Pawd, also a big part of that incredibly stingy defense. Pretty balanced offensive attack from what I could tell. Michelle Owabete, has about 3.5 kills per set, but a couple other seniors, Tasia Farmer and Brianna McKnight, are also averaging around 2.5 per set. And I think what I noticed generally is that this is a really veteran opponent. The only athlete who I just mentioned who wasn't a senior was one of those middle blockers, Grace Wishpard. So this very veteran Cougar team will not be facing any less veteran of an opponent. I think, like I said a moment ago, they kind of remind me of the South Dakota team the Cougars opened with last year. And if you'll recall, that was an extremely close back and forth 3-2 Cougar win. So certainly do not expect a walkover, even if we are able to get to the second round and face the Cardinal.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add outside of the fact that I looked up gauchos is a thing, but UCSB refers to themselves in their volleyball write-ups and their recaps as the gauchos. So they stick with gauchos there. So just want to clear that up for anybody who may be listening and is slightly confused. They still go by gauchos.
Sleep easy, everyone.
Yeah. But yeah, strong team, 17-1 in Big West play. But then they were actually stunningly upset in the Big West Conference semis by Long Beach State. But nevertheless, the 27-4 overall mark, the 38 finish in the RPI was enough to get them an at-large out of kind of a smaller mid-major conference there. And yeah, as you expect from a team that went 27-4, their offensive and their defensive numbers are pretty good. I think median hit percentage is around 200, and they're like 30-ish points above or below 200 offensively and defensively. So, pretty good on both sides of the ball. You mentioned the two middle blockers, Sam, whose name I couldn't find a pronunciation guide on their website. So I was like, out of respect, I'm just not going to even try to pronounce their names. I'm glad you had to go at it. But you mentioned, they both have some impressive block totals on the year. But one thing I did notice, if Houston is able to get outside and hit against their outside hitters, two of their regular outside hitters just 5'10", whereas all of Houston's outside hitters are 6 feet and above. So if Houston can get outside, maybe you obviously always want to use Kellen Morin as an attacking option in the middle to keep their other middle blockers honest. And then if you can get the ball outside, hit against their outside hitters, Houston might actually have an advantage there. So I think that's something for the Cougs to look out for. But yeah, tough match. And then, like I said, even if you win that one, almost certainly rewarded with the second round matchup against Stanford team, number 2 in the RPI, number 2 in the ABCA poll, swept Houston in the Sweet 16 last year. Crazy good. They hit 312 as a team against an incredibly tough strength of schedule. Like that's ridiculous. That's a really good match. That's like a good match against a mediocre team. And they did it all year against a bunch of really good teams, dominated a really good Pac-12. I think only one conference loss in the Pac-12. So it's a tough road ahead of Houston for sure. But looking forward to these ladies having one last ride together. And then, saying farewell to just an unbelievable senior class, Rachel Tullis, Abby Jackson, Kenna Sauer, Banu, and Morgan Yonda, and then Brashana Brown, I believe it's her last. She has, I think, has the year of eligibility left, but is graduating and leaving the program. So it's been an unbelievable ride all year, and looking forward to one last go of it here.
Yeah, the only thing I was going to add for Stanford is just that before I did put my notes together to preview them, I was just like hoping it's hope. There's just like maybe 2 or 3 of just unbelievable volleyball players I vaguely remember. Kendall Kipp, I remembered by name. Sammy Francis, their 6'6" middle blocker, who like got healthy just in time to face the Cougs in the Sweet 16 last year, which still
I'd forgotten about that.
Yeah, no, they're awesome. Libero, every one of them, Dustin Beck, Ella Rubin, their other good outside hitter next to Kendall Kipp. Just like at least 2 athletes who will be representing the United States, at least in the Olympics in volleyball, will be facing the Cougars if they are lucky enough to get past UCSB.
Yep, and just looking at UCSB, just a quick heads up, they did beat Iowa State in Ames. Played really well against Oregon, so not a cakewalk here, and should be a fun one to watch.
No, for sure.
All right, sticking with the in-season sports, Cougar men's basketball stayed undefeated this past week, easily handling Montana 79-44. This is, speaking of teams that gave Oregon a go, this is a Montana team that was tied with Oregon at the half earlier this year, but I think we still kind of knew that this was going to be, a fairly lopsided matchup, and the Cougars were in no mood for any of that close for a half nonsense that Oregon put up with. They scored the game's first 11 points en route to a 41-14 halftime lead and eventual 35-point win. And I'll throw out the usual qualifier that it's not the goal of the Houston men's basketball program to put up really humiliating numbers on mediocre teams. It's to actually beat good teams in games that are a little bit more, meaningful than this one. But my goodness, it is breathtaking to the extent to which Houston can make honest to goodness Division I athletes just look scared to play basketball for extended stretches. Like 41-14 at the half. Like, it's ridiculous. It's
especially when you scored the first 11.
Yeah, just like,
Like,
absolutely this making this team just looking like they are just dying to get back on the airplane and get home. So yeah, I mean, you don't want to overreact to single game results against not so good teams, but when you see Houston just, as we've seen through their first 7 games this year, pretty consistently beating the spread, pretty consistently beating their Ken Pom projections. It's not like Houston surprised anybody by being good this year. So even these experts who knew Houston was very good this year are still struggling to catch up with how much Houston is beating these teams by. So again, the bulk of the season remains, but through 7 games and with this Montana win, and especially, I think you got to be impressed with what we're seeing from this Cougar team thus far.
I think the line closed most places as the Cougs as a 25.5-point favorite to almost cover a 25.5-point spread by 10 when the second half was almost entirely garbage time. I think is pretty impressive. I mean, just credit to this team for spending precisely 0 seconds of this game playing around with their food, getting out to a 23-7 lead in the first 10 minutes. LJ Cryer continuing to find his shooting touch in non-conference play, 5 of 12 from deep, led all scores by a pretty wide margin with 24 points. If you want to pick a nit, and it's tough to pick a nit with how this team has played, another not great free throw shooting performance, and you can't really blame your big men. Like Wani Roberts and JVA Francis were a combined 5 of 8. Is that perfect? No, but like for 2 big men who aren't historically great free throw shooters, if you told me give me 5 of 8 most games from those 2 guys, Dustin's nodding his head for the non-video listeners. In fact, I would take that, and I think you both agree there. But I'm going to stake my prediction here. I'm still of the belief that while this won't end up being a great free throw shooting team, I think this early slump has kind of proven that this team won't finish the current season 318th in Division I and around 63%. Confident in that. They'll finish somewhere above that. I think how much better, I'm not exactly sure, but this team is going to progress to the mean, I guess. I think this team is going to finish closer to 70% they are right now. And who knows, maybe that ends up meaning we get some really good free throw shooting in like a close rock fight kind of Big 12 game down the stretch. That we'll get an unexpected like 20 of 21 in a 3-point road win against one of the projected NCAA teams. I think that would be really helpful. I'm kind of wish casting that here, but something to notice there. But boy, it's hard to pick nits when, like you said, this team is as breathtakingly good as it's been here in the early season.
Yeah, biggest thing for me, my biggest takeaway is LJ Cryer really finding himself in this offense. I think the first couple of games you could really see him struggling to figure out what his role was in the offense, and he just plain and simple wasn't making shots. And we've gotten past that point of the season, so he's really, you could tell that we have designed the offense around him. Everything is working for him now, and the stats prove that.
But I think we've seen enough through 7 games to say, like, if LJ Cryer's missing his shots now, like, oh, we don't have a plan B. I mean, Jamal Shea can get his shot, Emmanuel Sharp, the big men at times, especially Wani Roberts, et cetera, et cetera. And to what you said earlier, Dustin, also, like, I'm confident Montana's at least going to be around in that tier of contending Big Sky team. It's a 1-bid league, so it's basically about who's playing their best basketball come mid-March. But I think Montana will absolutely be around that. This will not be a punching bag of a team this year. And the Cougs made him look like a punching bag just for 40 minutes.
Yeah, I was going to say, the only other individual performances I wanted to highlight here, Jamal Shed just having the platonic ideal of a point guard line, 13 points, 7 assists, 4 steals, 1 turnover. You'll take that from your point guard any day of the week. Wani, 13 and 6 in this one. Looked like he was just toying with Montana at times. It was just like, I don't know, he just looked like a boxer facing an overmatched opponent. And you just go, okay, that's kind of fun, but also, he's going to have some fun matchups in the Big 12. This was not one of those fun match. I mean, it was fun in the sense of just watching him just bully some overmatched Grizzly forwards, but you realize how much fun this guy is going to be this year and how much fun he's going to be getting into the Big 12 here in a few weeks. Looking forward, the Cougar men's basketball team has its first true road game of the year on Friday when it will be in Cincinnati to face Xavier. The Musketeers, a Sweet 16 team a year ago in their first season of the second go-around with head coach Sean Miller, who coached them back 2004 to 2009. It took the job at Arizona, got fired by the Wildcats after 12 years, came back to Xavier. This year, however, has not been as exciting, at least early on. They're just 4-3. Their only win of significance came against a St. Mary's team, which is pushing the definition of a significant win because they looked pretty lousy this year. And then after an understandable early road loss to Purdue for Xavier, they took a 3-point loss to a pretty mid Washington team, and then most recently took a downright bad home loss to a 100-plus ranked Oklahoma University. or Oakland University, not Oklahoma University. That would have been a way less bad loss if it was Oklahoma University, but it was Oakland University. That's the Freudian stuff that tells you how bad that loss was.
This is Freudian so that this man does not respect Porter Moser and the Sooners. I'm sure Porter's listening.
I love me Porter Moser and the Sooners, but no, Oakland University, the Golden Grizzlies, not a team you should be losing to if you're a serious contender like Xavier. So tough loss. I will say, I don't know that I expect Houston to run away with this. You look at what they did again at Purdue, even one of their losses. But playing at Purdue this year, one of the toughest asks in college hoops. They kept it tight for the first 10, 12 minutes, never really let the Boilermakers run away, ended up losing by 12, 83-71. And, their other losses, games that they've been right there. And so just even playing against a really good team on the road, you haven't seen them get pushed around. And it's a team that I think will give Houston some trouble, and I think it's dangerous to get a team like that off the heels of getting kind of embarrassed.
Yeah, it's going to be your first real test, right? The first test of what this team looks like, what we can expect against a team that's not just a complete pushover. No disrespect to everyone.
I was gonna say, I think. First true road test. Dayton in Utah.
Yeah. Your first real road test where you're not in that tournament situation where you are. You're going up against a team that, even though they lost to Oakland, has played some really good teams really close so far this year.
Yeah, good enough team to play.
My bad on the disrespect to Dayton and
we're disrespecting all schools here.
I'll tell my cousin who's a Dayton alum who's definitely not listening to this that he'll be receiving your apology in a little bit. No, I mean it's a team that I think has shown their flaws. Dustin, I think you laid them out pretty well, but also not such a bad team that they can't play a good enough 40 minutes of basketball in front of what you'd assume would be a pretty good to very good home crowd there in Cincinnati in front of the Cougs. A couple guys that stood out to me. Quincy Olivari, somebody who the Cougs saw a couple times, I think, when he played at Rice. Pretty good shooter, though. Xavier as a team is outside the top 200 nationally in 3-point field goal percentage. Like the Cougs, the Musketeers haven't shot great on their free throws to start the season. There isn't really one thing that Xavier is truly exceptional at on the offensive end, though they're top 102-point field goal percentage. They're not terrible in too many things. They're between like 120 and 160 in like a lot of offensive categories. But top 50 nationally in both opponent 2-point and 3-point field goal percentage, though we'll note they've allowed 75 plus in their last two games against two teams that are outside the KenPom top 100, including that loss to Oakland. But we'll also watch Desmond Claude. He's a 6'6" guy who could be a possible matchup problem for the Musketeers. I think he's been their most consistently good offensive performer as well. Kind of like you eventually got to, Bobby. I think it's interesting to see what the Cougs look like in a first true road environment test, even though Dayton kind of felt like a quasi road environment with all their fans at the Charleston Championship. But I think definitely a different test here. Not a disaster if you lose, but I think one the Cougs should still expect to win.
Yeah, I like Claude and Olivari as a kind of 1-2 punch in the backcourt for them. You mentioned them; they combine to score over 30 points per game. And you've got Olivari, who, like you said, really good shooter, especially from deep Sam, and then Claude, who really good at getting into the basket. I think he shoots like 56% inside the arc, gets a lot of those 2-point baskets. So I think they give you two different challenges for Houston's guard group defensively. Another guy I like for them, 6'7" freshman, Dalen Swain, who doesn't start but plays 20 plus minutes per game, big havoc creator on defense. KenPom has him ranked in the top 400 or 500 nationally in both blocks and steals percentage. A guy who doesn't not like the focus of the offense, but he's high efficiency when he does shoot the ball. So definitely some guys to like, some things to like. You mentioned how hard it's been this year to for teams other than like Oakland and Purdue to put the ball in the basket against them. But in terms of areas where I think Houston can attack Xavier, there's really, you mentioned there's not a lot offensively where they're statistically just like, great. There's not a lot anywhere where they're just statistically terrible, but they've been pretty mediocre in a couple of areas where I don't think you can afford to be mediocre against Houston. They've been pretty mediocre on the glass, not bad, just not real good. And sometimes things go differently, especially when Houston's on the road. But more often than not, we've seen Houston feast against teams that are mediocre or okay, rebounding wise. And then same thing with turnovers. They're not bad. They're just all right. And I don't know, if you're about to face a Kelvin Sampson team, you want to be really good on the glass. You want to be really good in the turnover department. And Xavier's not really good at either of those things. So, hopefully that's an area where, maybe we see Xavier kind of play uncharacteristically well in one or both of those areas. But but I think it's going to be hard for them to do both. And that might be what it takes for them to stay in this game, because I think Houston can really just kind of wear a team down and beat them in one or both of those categories.
I was gonna say, like, I talked about Montana last time, and obviously very, very different tests than Montana we're talking about here. But like when you look at an opponent, you see, okay, the Cougs should be some kind of, I think, small margin favorite here. How does Xavier get the win here? And I'll admit, I can't quantify exactly how they do it unless they do, like you said, Dustin, play way above current average season performance in some key areas. Like, I don't know what Xavier does that really exploits the weaknesses such as they are of this Cougar team. But absolutely, in a road environment, could absolutely see them winning this game, just because it's what happens in college basketball sometimes.
For sure.
All right, sticking with the hardwood, the Cougar women's basketball team also stayed undefeated this past week with an 81-54 win over the University of New Orleans. They were playing without Layla Blair, who we just didn't feel real well. Didn't sound like it was super serious. Hopefully, we'll see her back soon. Maybe one of those instances where if you're playing a team that had more of a chance of challenging you, maybe she'd have been out there. But against the University of New Orleans, maybe you can go ahead and give her a rest. And that's what Houston did in this one. And this one did look a little bit troublesome for exactly one quarter. Houston was up by just 1 point after the first 10 minutes of the game, but pretty much put the pedal down for the next 2 quarters, outscoring the Privateers 47-23 over the second and third quarters combined to put this one comfortably in the win column. And, enjoyed seeing some other players step up with Layla Blair out. Not surprising necessarily. We've seen, I think, a lot of players contribute early on this year, even in the games when Layla Blair was playing. But nonetheless, good to see, like in the backcourt, Nia Boyd, 21 points and 5 assists in this one, taking up some of that scoring mantle with Layla Blair out. And then freshman Kara Merchant just continues to look so impressive. Only 4 points in 26 minutes in this one for her. But you look across the stat sheet of everywhere else that she's contributing: 9 rebounds, 3 assists, 4 steals, 4 blocks. She's just someone that has that innate ability, that basketball IQ, where she just always seems like she's around the ball doing good things. A really, really exciting thing to be saying about a freshman.
Yeah, I feel like this game is almost akin to like doing a routine workout with like a weighted vest or some other resistance. You're getting a little bit more out of something you can probably handle easily. Kind of the precautionary holding Layla Blair out in this one. Like you said, Dustin looked a little shaky for the first quarter, but Cougs went on a little 4-0 run to end the first and literally never gave the lead back from there. And Kira Merchant, who you just mentioned, I was going to say, we did not crib this beforehand. I have almost like word for word what you have there. Because you could, if you just look at the box score of this game, you might miss it. You might say, okay, like Nia Boyd contributed a lot offensively. Bria Patterson as well. Cameron Jones really did a lot on the offensive glass, which are all real things that happened in this game. That box score is reflecting what actually happened there. But I think you could miss what Kiara Merchant did if you didn't like watch this one. And she was, I think, not coincidentally, when the Cougs pulled away in the second quarter, Kiara Merchant was on there. She checked in with about 8 minutes left in the second quarter when it was still, I think, a 4-point game. And from there, the Cougs just put the pedal down and just did not let this one even be remotely close for the rest of proceedings. And that she was such a big part of pulling away. Not a coincidence. I think despite being one of the smaller players in either team, grabbed 5 offensive boards, had 4 steals and 4 blocks as well. I don't know how else to say it. She just has it. Like, if you could affect the basketball game the way she did as a freshman this early in her career while only going 1 for 5 from the field, that says something. That says that you can do more things than be an elite scorer, which she was at the high school level. Like most guards who get to the Division I level, she was a very high level high school scorer, but that she's not coming in here and not being able to adjust her role to a really veteran team, despite being, I think, like 4 or 5 years younger than a lot of your rotation guards. I think she doesn't look out of place with a very old team. And I mean very old in like the most complimentary way possible. I think it's one of the strongest things. I think it's one of the most, in my opinion, strong indicators that this could be an improved team from last year, is that this is such an old team. But I think Kira Merchant fits in great. Kira Merchant is a reason to be excited about this program beyond this season. She really looks like a revelation early on.
Yeah, and like for me, looking at the entire like box score of this game, field goal percentage, you're kind of going close with New Orleans here, right? 36 to 35.1. Turnovers, U of H does a great job of forcing turnovers. 22 turnovers to 14. You didn't really get that many more turnovers turnovers, right? Especially considering the high pressure defense that we play. But man, you look at these rebound stats, 62-36. Like, you're going to win some games if you can out rebound the other team by 26 rebounds. And you had 33 offensive boards in this game, 33 to 12. There's no way that you're going to struggle to lose a game when you have 33 offensive rebounds. When you have more offensive rebounds than you do defensive rebounds, it's not difficult to win some basketball games. So again, I talk a lot about this team. When I talk about them, I talk about their shooting percentage needed to go up over last year, and it did. But man, another big thing is if you're going to shoot low like we did, 36%, that's not super low, but that's fine. If you're going to miss the shots, 33 offensive rebounds sure does help you pull away and win by 27.
Yes, we already mentioned in our last episode last week that Houston was going to be facing Middle Tennessee on Wednesday. We weren't sure if we're going to get an episode out before then or not. They will follow that up with their 6th straight home game to start the year, hosting Florida A&M on Sunday afternoon. Don't want to relitigate the Middle Tennessee game too much since we did already talk about it. Notably
doing an encore of the Brandy Brown story.
Encore, Brandy Brown again.
We'll hear that right now.
Again. No, since our last episode, the Blue Raiders got an unexpected win, or an expected one, I should say, over Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville. It was a road game, but a little surprising to see them only winning by 7 points against a team that was ranked well down in the 300s last year. Still going to expect that one to be a tough matchup for the Cougs, though. Definitely the first test of any significance the Cougs will face this year, so we're all excited to see how they do. And then on Sunday, Florida A&M, not a team that should give Houston much trouble. The Rattlers went 5-23 last year, finished 331 in the net rankings, suffered 4 straight blowout losses to start this year against Tennessee, Middle Tennessee, Florida, and Cal before bouncing back with a 5-point win over Jacksonville U. And that's about as far as I went notes-wise in this one, because it just seems pretty clearly like a game that Houston should be winning comfortably.
Worst team that you've played to date. And all respect to a team of young women who are better athletes than I will ever dream of being, but probably the worst team. Might be the worst team to see in non-conference, but I think certainly the worst team at that point that you will have seen to date. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes, I say Houston has blown out better teams than this, so I think that that's okay. Then we're going to go ahead and probably stop.
I think
I'm not going to list off the starters for Florida A&M. Sorry, anyone that was hoping.
Rattlers is a fantastic mascot, though. One of my absolute favorites in all division.
Oh,
really, I didn't say not limited to all of college sports.
Yeah, it's a good
and
one.
FAMU is an elite abbreviation for your school as well. So a lot to like about that program. Just not one of the things to like is their chances of beating Houston in women's basketball this weekend.
Yeah.
All right, and that's going to be the end of this episode, I think. So we, as always, will give a big, hearty Scott and Horn podcast thank you to our Patreon supporters and encourage you, if you enjoy this podcast on a regular basis, you feel like you can afford $5 a month to put towards the work that Sam, Bobby, and myself do every week, we would love for you to go to patreon.com/shpodcast and sign on up. If you want to say hi to us, you can email us, shpodcast@gmail.com. You can tweet at us at SH Podcast, and you can Blue Sky over us. I did a Blue Sky post over there today, guys. It's an actual thing. It's a real thing, honestly.
Let's go, boys.
You can even probably hit us up for some invite codes, because I think we still have a few of those. So at podcast.bsky.social. So that's it for us. And as always,
go Cougs.